Welcome to Chemistry 1, Unit 4, Lesson 4 on chemical bonding. So we are going to start looking at how different atoms combine together to form compounds. So a chemical bond is an attractive force that holds atoms together in a compound. So there has to be something that is attractive in order to get these atoms, which normally are just neutral, to come together to form a compound. So two or more atoms form a compound. Some compounds have thousands and tens of thousands of atoms that make them up. Some things like O2, two atoms of oxygen together. So if a chemical bond is broken, a compound decomposes into its elements. And the reason we talked about electrons is because they are involved in bonding, and those that are involved in bonding are usually those in the valence level. So that's why we really stress those electron dot diagrams and talked about ions, because those are going to be really important in this lesson. So there are actually three different types of bonding. We're going to be looking at in depth in two of them, and we'll add another one in a little bit later when we talk about, after we talk about some of the other ones. So we'll add that in a little bit later. But the two main types that we're going to focus on are ionic and covalent. Ionic bonding results from electrostatic attraction among ions due to the transfer of one or more electrons. So that's a pretty complicated definition. So let's unpack this a little bit. Electrostatic attraction just means positive, negative. So we know that if something is positive or has a positive charge, it's attracted to a negative charge and vice versa. So we have a positive negative attraction among ions, and ions can be either cations or anions, positive or negative. And the key word here is transfer. If you remember one thing with ionic, it's transferring electrons from one thing to another. Covalent bonding results from sharing one or more electrons due to the overlap of electron clouds. So the key word here is sharing. So ionic transfer, covalent sharing. So to look at how we can determine whether or not something is going to transfer electrons or share them, we're going to talk about a little bit of review here. Ionic bonding occurs when cations bond with anions. And usually cations are metals and anions are nonmetals. These are positive ions, these are negative ions. Ionic bonds have a large difference in electronegativity between the metal and nonmetal. So here is one way that we can look at whether or not something is going to bond ionically or covalently is the difference in electronegativity. The difference is usually larger than 1.7 if ionic. Covalent bonds are less than that number, 1.7. And if you get 1.7, they can be classified as either. So in your packet, and I do have a copy of this paper in Schoology also, if you did not pick up your packet at the school, here is a chart of electronegativity values. You'll be able to use this. There's no reason why we would have to memorize this at all, but these are just the values. So if we are given compounds or two elements, we want to determine if the bond is ionic or covalent, all we have to do is look at their difference in electronegativity. It doesn't matter if the difference, we take the absolute value of it, so it doesn't matter how you subtract these. So if we look up the value for lithium and for fluorine, lithium is 0.98 and fluorine is 3.98. So if we look at those two values and we take their difference, it's 3.00. So we look to see, is it greater than 1.7 or is it less than 1.7 or is it 1.7? Those are our three choices. So greater than 1.7 is ionic, less than 1.7 is covalent, equal to 1.7 can be either. So this one is obviously greater than 1.7, so this will be an ionic compound. If we look at nitrogen and oxygen, nitrogen's value from the chart is 3.04, oxygen is 3.44. So the difference between these two is 0.40. That is less than 1.7. So a compound of N and O would be covalent.